when Mike and I approach elite team training as an example, the very first thing that we're going in and approaching is not technology when we're doing an implementation program to help them. What we're approaching them with is, what is your potential, as a human being? And what happens when you level up your potential in the practice? We know it affects your personal life, right? And if you level up in your personal life, it affects your business life and your career.
AI isn't just changing dentistry, it's completely redefining it. Tune into BYTE SIZED Podcast, the dental AI and tech podcast, and stay ahead of the curve.
And welcome back to another episode of the BYTE SIZED Podcast. Most dental practices that struggle with AI and technology adoption don't have a tech problem. They have a people problem. And most dentists never see it coming because it never makes it to their desk. So Julieanne O'Connor and Michael Keeter are the co-founders of Influential Dental, a personal and professional development company that works with some of the highest performing dentists, group owners, DSOs in the country. Julieanne is a mindset and influence coach whose work is grounded in neuroscience and practical psychology. And Michael brings nearly 2 decades of clinical and dental industry experience to the implementation side of that work. And together they've trained entire dental teams, corporate organizations on how to move through resistance, take ownership of change, and actually execute at a higher level. And that combination makes them unusually well positioned to address why so many dental AI rollouts stall and fail to get started. So welcome to the show, Julieanne and Michael. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad that we got connected because I really found that your direction, your perspective on this is unique for sure. Can you really quick? Can you just tell us, high 30,000 foot view, what is influential dental?
Yeah,
right.
You got it.
Okay, I get mixed up with your magazine, but Influential Dental. What is it about? How'd you guys get started? Give me the goods on that.
Yeah, so I'll take this and then I'll flip it to Mike. But basically, we came together, we created this company with the concept of just lifting up people who are lifting others up in the dental space specifically. I come from a private coaching of high achievers background, and I've been working in the dental space a really long time. And Mike's been in space for a really long time, and we do a lot of elite team training and different things. And we've created this transformational development company that really helps people to implement new technologies, to set goals, hit really, super strong, powerful goals, but simultaneously they take back their quality of life when they work with us. So we launched our magazine, Influence. It is the only lifestyle and mindset magazine in the dental space. And we talk about all these topics that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Everything goes back to psychology. Sorry.
It does.
Right?
No, it does.
That.
And how we came together and truly is what we preach is friends first, right? And we do that in our personal and professional lives. And I think it's a good way to look at it. Regardless of the technology that's out there, you need to have that kind of cohesive, friendship and teamwork setting. So that's the foundation of who we are as people and what we talk about when we go out and train and speak and coach. And very much looking forward to this afternoon talking with you, Adrian, and getting to know a little bit more about AI and the human experience.
Yeah. Super, super interesting topic that everybody in every industry is like trying to tackle and figure out because we're at such a kind of an inflection point with how humans are interacting with artificial intelligence on multiple levels. I want to focus on, to bring this down to the dental space, I want to focus on implementation of AI. And so dental practices bring some software, AI influenced software, something like that, into their practice, and it falls on its face. Okay. Why is it stalling out? What's happening when like a doctor comes back from an event and says, here's a great piece of software, or here's a concept or idea or whatever, some kind of change that needs to happen. Why is it so difficult to implement? What's happening?
All right. So where do we open this can of worms, right?
No, it's a very, I probably should have been more specific, but we'll dig on it. We'll dig on it. So just start where you want to start. Dig.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start and then Mike chime in, but very obviously, what happens is we see dentists go to whatever conference, they get really excited about something new technology. Sometimes it's really incredible technology. Sometimes it's terrible, and in the dental space, so many people have been through these transitions, and we all know how difficult it is to adopt new technology as it is. I mean, if we just upgrade our iPhones, we're annoyed because we have to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So everything is disruption right away out of the gate. But more importantly, when you come back and you're all excited, it's like Mike and I say, if one of us goes to a conference and the other doesn't, one of us comes back, we're all excited, but there's no emotional buy-in by the other party, right? So we're coming
Right.
back, we're all hyped, and there's no strategic, there's no emotional buy-in. We're just like, here, take this, and we cram it down somebody's throat. And it's very off-putting, right? There's a lot of things that come up. We can deep dive into that a little bit, but that's kind of just a really scratching the surface of what's happening right out of the gate when somebody comes back with new technology that says, we're going to change everything and it's going to be great.
And a dentist office is very dynamic, as anyone knows who spent much time in there. And I think it's truly the fear of the unknown as well, right? I mean, AI sometimes has scary connotations behind it. Is it going to replace us? Is it going to cause more work? So I just think truly the fear of the unknown and why now at this point.
Yeah. So usually, okay, look, using an example of, let's say that, let's use the example we've talked about, which is, let's say a dentist or an office manager or a decision maker for the practice goes to an event or meets somebody or gets on a demo or something of some product. Okay. And they get excited about it. They buy it. They come back to the practice and they, for lack of a better word, kind of dump it on the team. Okay. Obviously there's problems with that we can dig into, but I think one of the issues that happens in that is that the technology company is kind of expected to deliver a product where the onboarding and implementation is seamless, is easy. And I think there are a lot of companies that do a really good job of that. I mean, we even have products that are AI based where the implementation is a big part of the process, because if we know if they don't implement it, then it falls and they cancel, right? So where does the fault lie? Does the fault lie generally with the technology company? Does it lie with the leadership capabilities of the person that purchased the product? Does it fall with creating a vision for the team so that they understand that they've got to implement this? I mean, probably a little bit of responsibility in everybody, but where does it primarily fall, would you say?
Yes, I'll take part of this and then I'll let Mike take part of it. I'll start with the technology company part of it, okay? Because there is definitely a responsibility there. A lot of that is oftentimes transparency in terms of the time frame, what it's going to take, the process that it's going to, is really going to be involved, who's going to be responsible, what that rollout looks like, what the timelines are going to be. So a lot of times when people sell stuff, right, they're not transparent about what it's really going to require of a team. So I'd start with, yes, that's one element of it, right? And Michael, I'll flip it to you for leadership, because I think that's the other, significant part of this.
Yeah, and I do think it's that office manager, dentist, or whoever that brings back that technology to really explain the why behind it, right? What problem is it solving? How is it going to elevate those around them as well as the practice itself? So I do think that vision needs to be explained before, the box is even open per se, or that software is downloaded. So ultimately, it's that leader of the technology that brings it into the practice to fully vet and share with the team on the why behind it and what problem it's going to solve and why it's going to make them more efficient and better as a team or as an organization.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question on this, because I would even question the scenario that we're discussing, which is office manager or doctor, whoever, buys a piece of software and brings it back to the team and says, now we're going to implement this. Right. Is that even the right way to do it?
No.
Yeah,
not
at all.
So clearly, we kid around a lot about how, doctors come in and they're just like, we're a go team, we're doing this. And they never even ask for input from the team. And the answer is always in the team, because they're the ones that really make or break everything that you're doing. So we want them to be fully supported, but we especially would love to have them in on the decision-making process, right? And there's a way to do that. And I think it's often taken for granted with leaders. And then so they're starting out of the gate with a problem already, right? And they're leading with this attempt at inspiring people to integrate something that they were no part of. And so, yeah, you definitely want to get buy-in.
Yeah, and
When you
with that
can.
is that trust and ownership, right? That everyone needs to trust what's happening and take ownership of that. And it starts from the hiring. I mean, it goes all the way back, regardless of what's implemented in the practice, especially with AI and all that it can do and all that's either fact or fiction. So I agree with Julieanne that that buy-in or that team approach
I want
has
to
to come in first.
I want to add to that though. There is a place also where teams need to support their leaders in making decisions, right? Because we have decision makers in running a practice no matter what. And sometimes there's opportunities to buy something at an event, they get a deal on it or any number of things, right? So I think it's a cultural integration issue and it starts at, at the practice level. But if you're dealing with, hey, it's just thrown on you and there's a lot to it and nobody's been even, texted or called in, I would
Right.
say people at an event, go ahead and include people even in the conversation while it's happening in that
But
decision, if possible.
and one last thing, Adrian, is not to hijack this, but it goes again back to trust and the track record of that doctor, that office manager, right? If that foundational trust has been laid in that office and they know that that doctor, that office manager can make the best decision for them and their team, they're not challenging things. They, of course, want to know about it and how it's going to support them. But as Julieanne said, I mean, the decision maker is the decision maker for a reason.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a misalignment here with that. So if you're a technology company and you go to an event, let's just use like you go to Midwest, Chicago Midwinter, right, or Greater New York show, right? If you go to a show, that technology company is probably going to be investing $20,000 ish for the booth, for flying a couple salespeople out, and those salespeople are paid based on sales. I mean, the metrics are. I mean, you really get behind the veil on any of these companies. It's like we're going to invest $250,000 this year in shows, and we got to get this many sales to justify it. And if those sales aren't coming through, salespeople get fired, right? Or the model gets shifted to a different strategy. So when a doctor is at an event and sees this technology, the sales rep for that company, whether they realize it or not, are going to downplay the difficulty of in implementation. It's just inevitable. Like every concern that comes up, like, hey, that's not a problem. We've taken care of that. It's all been done. Blah, 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 right? Now, I'm not saying that that's incorrect or a lie. I'm just saying that there is a heavy incentive and compensation model behind making a purchase now rather than later. There just is. So, and I don't know if you can change that. You can't change that model in the industry, right? I mean, people buy on emotion. They don't necessarily plan ahead on purchasing a piece of software all the time. So it's that situation is going to happen. So the doctor or the decision maker comes back and says, we've purchased this product. And what you're saying is that if there is not some kind of a model by which the team understands that this situation is going to happen, and we're also, part of the process of the implementation so that they're not scared, right? Because if a doctor comes back and says, hey, I've got this new AI tool that does all of our note taking, all of a sudden, whoever's doing note taking in the office is like, oh shit,
There goes
what
my
am I
job.
doing now? Right?
Right.
Well, what if I do instead? There's definitely fear there. So what I'm saying is that I don't know if there's a way to change the model of emotion-based decision-making without planning. I think that's inevitable. Okay.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is there has to be some understanding at the practice level that this is going to happen and here's how we handle those types of situations.
Exactly. That should be trained into the culture. It really should. And, leaders and decision makers should be respected to make decisions, very obviously. But it's also the accountability on the part of the decision maker to be able to come back and represent that they have been sold this technology and that they don't know exactly what that implementation process will be. They should not resell a salesperson's pitch, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
So that they can set their team up for success. That, hey, I don't know what this is going to look like. I would love to get everybody's input. Let's see how we can get. So post sale, there's still a way to get your team involved in decision making. And I think
Right.
that's critical.
Right. And along that is that authenticity and that transparency that office and that culture shares, as Julieanne said. So sure, we got this new bit of technology. They understand the doctor or that decision maker did that for a reason, and be transparent, authentic on the reasons why, and to make sure that they contact the manufacturer as they need help, and to get that training set up right away, and to incorporate all those people that are going to be using that technology. And it's done from day one, right when it's introduced.
So there's definitely resistance from a dental team in a product being brought back to the practice, just because maybe they don't have the right communication structure. There's not a correct decision-making process or implementation process, regardless of the software. Okay. That needs to be solved. And I actually want to dig in on the psychology of that here in a second. But before I get there, there's so much, and I have a personal experience around this that I could dig into, but let me state the problem first. When AI technology comes into a practice, it is inevitable that some of the players, some of the team members are going to be threatened simply because the AI is able to do probably some of their current responsibilities. And I think this is a very real issue across the board in any business, that people are afraid they're going to lose their freaking jobs to AI. And in the dental industry, I've seen this, okay, but I'm curious about your experience with that specific issue. It's the fear of AI taking somebody's position. How real is it? And maybe dig into that a little bit.
I'll definitely chime in on this. So first of all, yes, that's real. But there's so much more to the depth of psychology that we take for granted. So we go into it assuming that that's the reason. But in some cases, there might be completely different reasons altogether. In fact, in some cases, they may really want it. They just don't want to do extra work and actually implement it. In some cases, it might be something entirely unknown. And I think that's where things break down, is that people are not digging deeper to figure out why their team is ticking a certain way. So when Mike and I approach elite team training, as an example, the very first thing that we're going in and approaching is not technology. When we're doing an implementation program to help them, what we're approaching them with is, what is your potential, as a human being? And what happens when you level up your potential in the practice? We know it affects your personal life, right? And if you level up in your personal life, it affects your business life and your career. And so we get to the core of what is making every individual tick. We're looking at the psychology of why people make buying decisions, why they act and behave certain ways. We're looking at the dynamic of the team members with one another, who really loves technology, who despises it and cringes, who's very technical and systematic and things, who's just all about being a people person. And so if you put the wrong people in the wrong seat, then, or they're already, going to be against it because it's just complicated. Their mind has a harder time at adopting it, for example, or understanding it. You might be surprised that it's not what we think. And we have to get to the bottom of that so we can support them. That's essentially where we need to come from, is how do we support them in implementing it, learning it? Who needs a longer learning cycle, or a learning curve? Their learning curve is a little bit more complex, whatever the case might be.
And if you have, and Adrian, to build upon what Julieanne said, and to make sure when those conversations are taking place in that environment, that everyone is safe, right? That you're in a safe spot if you do have the right people on your team, right? Because people can be cross-trained, retrained, find a position for them within an organization. That comes from not only that the head of the organization, but also from those around them, right? You have to have teammates helping teammates, right? And everyone has each other's back. So we just laid out on the table and why we're doing what we're doing, and that you are in a safe space to learn and potentially fail at some of this new technology. But at the end of the day, everyone's safe and we're all moving in the right direction, in the same direction.
Right. I can't like emphasize how hard I got punched in the face with this particular issue with my own company. So let me, and I think what was, I didn't see it coming, which is crazy. I thought I would recognize this, but maybe it's because I'm a crappy leader, or maybe I don't have great communication skills. I mean, whatever. Anyway, let me tell you what happened though, right? And I think this is really just a great kind of explanation to really dig in on this issue. So we do a ton of copywriting, right? We're a marketing company. We build websites. We write pages for websites, blog articles, that kind of stuff. We do hundreds of pages of copywriting every month. And we have two primary copywriters. And they've been working here for years. I mean, they're great employees. They're phenomenal copywriters, okay? And I looked at the amount of time and the steps that it takes to write copy. This is about a year ago. And I thought, and I was really getting into using AI to do copywriting. And I thought there's a more efficient way to do this, okay? It not only will be a better product, I think we can get better copywriting, which I didn't tell my copywriters because that would be kind of offensive, I think, or they may have taken it that way. But there was definitely a way to write copy where we would spend, 6 hours getting a piece of copy written with all the steps and cut that down to 5 minutes. And this is not just for any of my clients that are watching. This is not us just going to ChatGPT and say, write me a page about dental implants. This is a pretty sophisticated, like 10, 12 step process where we're leveraging 4 different AI models and all sorts of stuff. So it's a pretty sophisticated copywriting project that I decided to put forward. Okay. So I met with my SEO manager, the person is in charge of the team that does all the copywriting. I said, here's what we want to do. Okay. This is what I mapped it out. This is why we're going to do it. This is what it's going to do. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Makes total sense. Like, oh yeah, of course we can write copy in 5 minutes rather than 6 hours. Right. So I give this to my team, my manager, my SEO manager. And I think I have buy-in. Right? Because it makes so much freaking sense. It's obvious we need to do this, right? And so I push forward on this project, which probably should have taken 4 or 5 months to develop, okay? It ends up taking about 9, 10 months to develop. And what I didn't recognize, and I blame myself, I do not blame my employees for this, I blame myself, which is that my manager was more concerned about the effect that this would have on the 2 copywriters on her team and the change in how their job descriptions would be than concerned about the profitability and the streamlining of the company. She's more concerned about the people, which is awesome. It's great that she's concerned about that. That's part of her job, right? But at the same time, what I'm noticing is that there's feet being dragged. There's really not a lot of effort and energy being placed in like fixing things to move it forward. And I finally get 7, 8 months in. I'm like, why is this taking so damn long? Until I had to bring somebody else in because I can't communicate well to go, here's the problem. The problem is that we're concerned about we got a person concerned about the copywriters and their job descriptions. Like from a leadership CEO point, it's like, obviously we want to make more money because then we can pay our people more, but they're not seeing that at all. They're seeing a fundamental change in their job and they think they're going to get fired, even though I said explicitly, no one is getting fired. No one. Right. It's just like, I didn't recognize. that problem.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, people have a really hard time valuing themselves. And that's the reality, right? And I think also people are not taught that friction is like normal and actually good and part of the process. And the more I think we can put it to the team to get creative with the solutions we bring to them and say, hey, what now? Because it's really hard to teach people to value themselves. And even if you were to come in and say, hey, everyone's going to get an extra free day off every week, they would be panicked if they're used to over serving and that's how they value themselves, frankly. And so what you have to do is say, hey, how do you want to contribute? How do you want to bring additional value if we free up this time? Can you guys come up with some really creative ideas of what we could do with that extra time or that extra money or whatever? And you really still have to get them to put it on the table and speak about it and figure out why those things matter to them, and I think we neglect to realize, and we're all kind of guilty of this, where we have this ceiling on our own head of what we think we deserve, if you will. And so, if you get a contract and it's just too big and too good to be true, you scramble, you work harder for it, even though you don't have to, your value is going to be in the ROI. And yet you'll still do it if you're not used to increasing your own value because you don't see that final piece of it. Right? Does that make sense?
I'm actually, well, yeah, generally, but I'm a little bit lost on what you mean by people don't know how to value themselves, or like, walk me through that, because I'm just trying to understand where you're going with it.
I love it. I appreciate that you don't understand it, what I'm trying to say. So what happens is if somebody is concerned about losing their job, they don't value themselves high enough or in a new way in how they provide their value. They're concerned that if suddenly their job is replaced, what are they going to do? Right? What are they, and for some people, they'd say, oh, more free time. Great. I'll do something else. Other people have to be guided through leadership. They're just not trained. They're not naturally going to come to the table and say, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Once we get it implemented, I'm not going to need to do this thing I originally did. And now I can come up with something more fun to do that contributes at a higher level and affects the bottom line in a better way. Do you see? And so we have to guide people through that process of activating their creative and critical thinking mind. And there's a very specific way to go about that. And I don't think most leaders have been trained on even how to do that with their own people. And I think that's where we have a disconnect.
Yeah. And with that is that ownership, right? The ownership of that individual to say, I can do more with less, or I am capable and I am worthy, right? And to search out, to ask for, okay, we're going to now be more efficient. What else can I do? Or like you said, have that manager maybe spell that out for them as well. So I think it's a combination of everything as a leader, as a CEO, to know that, but also to trust that your managers and your individual team can take that on. And again, that just comes from repetition, and it comes from that overall culture. That if there is a question about anything, about worth or how I can do more, bring it to the table. And so this is just maybe a lesson for you.
I want to argue on one thing that you just said. So I don't think it's repetition. We go in and we do implementation programs. It's instant change and it's permanent change in most cases, right? Because we come at it from a very different place. When you hear repetition and to Mike's defense, you're talking about safety is often built in time spent. And so it's like you keep on keeping on standing by somebody long enough who was abandoned as a child, and eventually they learn that you're not going to abandon them, as an example, right? But it may not be the case right out of the gate. And that's the repetition piece, is you just keep showing up and keep showing up.
Correct.
But there are faster ways to get people to feel safe and commit to the buy-in. And I think that's what's difficult for most leaders who haven't been taught the psychology behind it, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I'm gonna say some things that I hope never get repeated, but I'm gonna do it anyway
On a podcast that's going out publicly over the wires to everyone.
I'm going deep into my own soul here. I'm just telling you some of the initial reactions that I have. And I think that these are similar reactions that any leader would have. So what you're asking for is you're asking for a type of communication style that I think is very difficult for a lot of people, for most people, which is I would go to my employee, let's say I'm a dentist, or let me use my example, okay? My example, the copywriting example. I would go to my employees, the copywriters and the manager, and I'd say, look, you guys are worth so much more than you realize, okay? And this is how we can scale up, or this is a way in which you can improve the value that you provide as a human being in relationship to this company, okay? Here's some ways that we could do that, blah, 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 blah. Using these tools, using that, leveraging, giving you the tools. I mean, we are beings that use tools, right? And this is just AI is just another tool, right? Here's a tool that will, rather than cracking nuts with your fist, here's a hammer, right? And it's going to help you crack the nuts a lot quicker. And you're more valuable now, okay? That's kind of where you're going at, but with the right language, okay? Right communication style. I'm not really probably nailing it well. So for some leaders, the initial reaction is, for hell's sakes, just do what I told you to do. This is where we're going. If you don't like it, you're out of here. I mean, that's kind of like the easy way to like try and, maybe not the easy way. It's probably the hardest way to do it, because then you got to find somebody new and whatnot. But it's like, why is it the response? And this is not me saying this about myself. This is me asking a question I think some people might be thinking. Why is it the responsibility of the leader to kind of coddle, if that's not the right word, insert your word, but that's kind of the negative connotation of what I'm talking about. Coddle somebody into becoming better, when I should just find employees that want to be better and I don't have to coddle them. That's the initial reaction I get.
I get it. Look, there are plenty of leaders who say, I pay them. That should be sufficient. They took the job with the agreement that for this pay, they're going to do what I ask. I get it. But that is not how human beings behave. It is a behavioral situation. If you lead humans and you want them to be bought into your mission, you have to buy into their mission. That's the reality. And money is not a sustainable motivator. Never will be, truthfully. What matters to people is what money buys for them, what it represents for them. And for many people, money represents lack. It represents money doesn't grow on trees. It represents hard work. It represents exhaustion. It represents a lot of very negative things that they heard as children. And they've been told and taught things that are not necessarily true about who they are, what they're worth, and all of it. So our job as leaders is either we learn how to do this, or we hire somebody like Mike and myself to come in and do an implementation program that actually works. And sometimes it's worth investing in a third party who's a master at the psychology behind it.
And
because then very quickly it changes the game.
And also, Adrian, you brought up something that I heard that you said, I'll tell them to do it this way. And if they don't like it, they can leave. Okay, well, what's the cost of retraining and hiring and branding and team dynamic? And we know in dentistry, that's huge, right? Is turnover and that. So I would challenge anyone out there, if they manage that way and they keep going through people over and over and over, can you be more profitable looking at it from Julieanne and I's way?
Yeah. I actually talked to an orthodontist back in New Jersey. He has 13 practices. And the cost of finding a hygienist or a dentalist, an orthodontic assistant, is between $80,000 to $100,000. When you look at all of the costs, it's not just the cost of replacing the individual and the time spent, but you've got the team screwed up. Like the bonds that are built on a team are solid. And when somebody is fired or leaves uncomfortably, you got to deal with the aftermath of that person having left and the offenses that might happen. You can't pretend that the person who left under uncomfortable terms isn't talking to the other employees. They absolutely are. It's the first freaking phone call they make at the end of the day. What happened? Why did you get fired? Right? Or why did you leave? And so there's damage control like crazy. So I probably should have hired. I think I should have hired you guys maybe.
Well,
Unquestionably in this case. But that's that this you know, it sounds so ridiculous because we're talking about copywriting and we're talking about as an example. And it seems like such a simple thing. Like I just hired the system to save money. Why would I need to hire a third party to come in and help with the implementation? But you'd be surprised how inexpensive it is to hire in a third party who understands psychology that gets buy-in very quickly. You know, we'll turn around crazy teams and turn them into elite teams within 2 or 3 sessions of 2 hours each, and we're done. And it's sustainable. Maybe we'll check in every quarter. But the same with implementation. I mean, my gosh, you do the math on 9 months versus 4 months, and or the wasted time and energy is 100% worth it because you can tackle the psychology very quickly. People take for granted this does not require years of therapy. Okay, this is some very simple. Yeah, right. Well, the leaders might need it, but the change happens instantly when we show them some very simple things that get to the depth of why they do the things they do, the way that they do, and how to value themselves in a new way, and how then to think critically for themselves and bring something new to the table. And then, I was just going to say, and then timelining implementation, figuring out the process, that's the easy part, frankly. It's always the psychology that's going to cost you.
Right. Yeah.
And what if you're tackling a certain problem, it permeates throughout the entirety of the company. So they're able to operate at a higher level in everything they do, not just say implementation of AI. It's onboarding patients. It's everything else. It's having more fun. It all plays upon itself. And that's what's exciting about getting to the root cause. And I've seen it multiple times working with Julieanne, where we give people basically their lives back because, again, they're not fighting against technology. They're not fighting against themselves. They're dealing with some of their internal issues. And once that's found, it's literally our trajectory is so much higher and the ROI is X.
Yeah. So this is brilliant. Okay. So you have a situation, you bring on an organization, or let's say dental practice. Okay. And you're realigning the team, trying to get them all moving in the same direction, kind of thing, right? So you approach this individually you approach it from a mission of the company, and that's established. You're dealing with the leader, making sure that they are understanding how they need to, the relationship and the communication styles that they have with their own team members, and you're dealing with the team members and the psychology that's playing inside of this individual to help them understand their value. Okay, I get all that. How do you quickly identify an employee on a dental team who's just not going to make the change? Like, you can go as deep as you want in their childhood, all their trauma, and they are just rigid. They're not going to but I mean, there's 2 questions here. Okay. One is, how often does that happen? Like, how often do you go into a dental team and it's like, I got crazy people working for me, I can't get them aligned, and they'll never do what I ask them to do? How often, what percentage are you able to say, oh no, these are all good people, we just need to approach it differently, and all of them fall in line, right? So what's the percentage? Like 90% of the time, 80% of the time?
Okay,
And then
so
how do you
I refuse to give a percentage on this, but
come
on. Said, what did they say? At least 90%.
You don't have to give me a percentage, but just give me it's rarely it happens that you think it's like that.
I would say if we get called in to work with what we would maybe label as a dysfunctional team, you'll find that everybody's a good person. There's unquestionably no doubt about it. But habits are deep. And at the end of the day, some people will see in themselves what they're capable of and the potential that they have if they change certain habits that are very simple to change. And they will want that. They're ready for it. And other people are not. They would rather be under the ceiling of comfort. The ceiling of comfort is just that, it's complacency. It's, I don't want to do anything different. I just want to go home, watch the same show again. I don't want to have to put more effort in. And that's just where I'm at in my life. And some people are there. And if that is not a fit, typically when we come in with this type of change management or this kind of discovery in terms of the psychology and what's possible for people. What's going to happen is your whole team will hold most people will want to step into their potential. I promise you, it's powerful. They all know there's something more for them. And if you can show them how, then what they're going to do is they're going to hold each other accountable in a way that when they hear somebody telling a story that brings the whole team down or themselves, they're going to say, hey, remember we were taught this thing that lifts us up and you're doing the opposite and it's very obvious. And people will end up self-selecting out in most cases. They don't, I don't think I can't remember the last time somebody had to be let go after we've come in and done training. It just doesn't happen. We come in, first of all, we establish safety out of the gate that everyone's going to be given the same possibility of stepping into the potential. And really, it's going to affect their personal lives. And that's where we come from to start with. And we don't ever go in with the leader's mission. We go in with what is everyone's mission. And so you start with the individuals and then we tie it to the leader's mission. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And this worked with individual practices and organizations, because we do this training at organizational level as well as the practice level. But as Julieanne said, people do self-select in or self-select out, and that is ultimately their choice, but they're given the opportunity to succeed. And if there's truly a bad apple, then, again, we're not going to say it never happens, but very rarely, like she said, that decision is going to have to be made. But it's amazing in the empowering that you see when people really can truly live into their potential and get rid of the stories that they've had from 30, 40, 50 years ago and live in the now. And we go through, a bunch of different exercises that really talk about that. And it's just not the most dysfunctional organizations. I really want to say it's those that want to go from good to great. And Julieanne can give you multiple examples of those where it's money goals, where they want to go from, so many millions to, 10x that, or they want to go from 5 practices to 20 practices. We really help them really get their mindset on how to do that. And Julieanne, I don't know if you want to give examples about that, but definitely we can help people go from good to great as well.
Yeah, I mean, our target audience is not dysfunction. It's actually our target audience are people who are doing really great and they want to do more. But occasionally we get called in for these more difficult situations. The same stuff applies to both sides, right? And we have more fun playing at a functional level, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, if I private coach, I promise you the people who hire me are not the people who are not coachable. They're coachable. They want to step into the next thing, right? And they all are tied to teams, almost all of them. Like can't think of anyone who doesn't require other people to help them hit their goals. And so at the end of the day, we have to then level up all those people with similar types of mindset. And it is letting go of a lot of past stuff. It's not as much about here's new information. Let's get to the bottom of the habits. Why is it that you feel this way? Why do you think a certain way? How do we get you to consider another possibility? And then we allow them to bring stuff to the table. And it's powerful. It's beyond what people.
The bottom up strategy. It's a balancing of top down versus bottom up strategy.
Yeah, it's both, exactly.
Well, yeah. So there are. I mean, you guys are kind of in this technology space. I mean, you know how fast this is moving. I cannot keep up with all of the stuff that's being developed. It's happening so fast that it's crazy. It's wild what's going on, right? So products are being developed, softwares are being developed, new tools, that kind of stuff. Dental practices are going to be hit with this stuff for the next several years as AI gets really strong and the capabilities are more integrated. I mean, it's going to happen. They're going to be coming like crazy, right? So, how do you, how would you, when you talk to a dental practice, well, let me ask it this way. For the practices that are going to be best at adoption, the best at implementation, how would you separate those types of practices versus practices that are going to struggle and are probably, honestly, because if you don't use a lot of these technologies, you're just going to get left behind. There's just too much streamlining and profitability opportunities out there, right? So like, how do you separate these things? If there was a practice that's doing things right, what are some aspects of how that company is run in order to best kind of like identify their culture or, to best most. I am like repeating myself and not asking this question like I should
I
ask.
get where you're going with it, though.
You see where I'm trying to go?
I
Why
definitely
don't
am.
you ask, Julieanne, why don't you ask me the question I'm trying to ask you and then answer your own question? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so what's going to set people apart from those that get left behind, and what's going to be the success factor for those that
Right.
just adopt and move forward? So it's an interesting question, actually, because in some cases, people who adopt the wrong stuff too quickly will get left behind because something new will be way better, faster, and if somebody is open to the new stuff and not tied to old stuff, somewhere in the mid range, if that makes sense,
Right.
they're actually going to go faster. So it's a little bit crazy. It's a little Wild Westish at the moment. However, foundationally, human beings are making the decisions. And so at the end of the day, if I were a practice owner, I would never try to do this within my own practice without having a third party involved who's overseeing and or connected somewhere on the outside who has a vested interest in your success and is paying attention outside and who is not tied to what you already have. That makes sense. They're not stuck in your practice like I already invested this in her. And it's all psychology at the end of the day. It both matter, don't get me wrong. But you have to be able to pivot very quickly if there's a change and an opportunity to do so. And there are ways to do things without it being very costly. But I would always have coaches. I would always have consultants and people who are working with me or working with confidants or mentors or something that is connected well on the outside. And sometimes that's your peers even. And being really involved in masterminds or something like that.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate what Julieanne said. You don't have to do it by yourself, right? I mean, there's all kinds of out there organizations, your peers, successful practices, other companies. I think you need to look outward as much as you look inwards. Also, I look at what we do as we time, like she said before, where you want to be in 5 years, 3 years, 1 year. What does that look like? And if you have current technology, that's only going to get you to year 1, and you're looking out to year 3 and 5, then you are going to have to invest in those things as long as you're just not pouring all that money and you don't see what it's going to get you. So don't, I guess, fall in love with bad money or hold yourself back because you've invested in something where if you invest in something new, it can take you even to that next level. So I guess just be open-minded to where you want to go and how that technology or those people around you are going to take you to that next level. And don't just own it on yourself because you'll lose sleep over it. You'll second guess things. Be open, as she said, to move the needle forward.
And these conversations need to be happening right now. No different than teaching people about how to take responsibility for their own burnout so that they don't burn out and blame you. Those are conversations that should be taught. Friction is normal. We have to adopt things. We have to get on board and get the whole team helping you look for those opportunities as well. So it's beyond the leader, right? But the leader is responsible for creating the culture.
There's, I love it. You mentioned something in your first comment, Julieanne, that I think is pretty valuable, which is, or I think this is what you're indicating. The software development is happening so fast right now that the products that are being developed today may be outdated in 6 months, right? I've seen that. I've gotten excited about something, went out and invested in a piece of software, implemented it, and now there's a product that's 10 times better 6 months later. So there is an aspect of the speed at which everything is being developed, where you have to understand that you can't move too quick, because if you move too quick, the amount of effort and energy in the implementation of that particular product or service may have been better to wait, right? And I'm telling all of the practices that are looking at our software products should buy right now for sure. But what I'm saying is, well, what I'm
only
really
because you have your finger on the pulse of what's coming and you have run your business well to be able to adapt as well.
I'm telling you, if I used to think that dentists could do their own marketing. Matter of fact, most of our services, why are you laughing already?
Can you block my video right now? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
No, we've been in the industry for a long time. We've seen people try, right?
Most of our products, our social media product, our reviews product, all this kind of stuff, we would have two versions of it. We have like a DIY version where we would just train your team. And then we have like, we'll full manage it. We'll do it for you. And we used to sell our services like that. And what's happened in the last 2 years, and I know this is not a sales pitch, but dentists cannot do their own marketing today. It's almost impossible. You would have to be a 2.5 million plus practice that has the budget to hire a couple people to do it full time. That like literally that's what you need. I mean, I've got 26, 27 employees here and, thousands of clients. And it's like what we're trying to do to streamline stuff and stay on like, there's no way. There's no way so to the same, I guess this is a parallel kind of conversation. It's like, don't try and change the psychology in your practice if it's already screwed up with your lack of psychological capabilities and leadership skills. Hire Julieanne and Michael, right? And if you don't have any patients coming in or you need more, don't think you can go build a marketing system in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I mean, we spent 16 years developing all these marketing systems and they've changed dozens of times.
Well, Adrian, break it down to the simple fact is if they could save money painting their own practice if they wanted to, but guess what? They're not good painters, and they make more money and they enjoy doing dentistry. So why all of a sudden would you be good marketers? Because that's something that's kind of cool and you think you can do. So I would break it down to the simple fact is if you're a dentist, you love doing dentistry, you're successful doing it, you're powerful doing it, outsource. Now, these are my opinions. Julieanne may disagree with me, but I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I agree. I don't think it's the dentist in a lot of cases. What I think is happening is you'll see the influence is so critical to understand. And in a dental practice, if you come in, let's say with social media, and you've got somebody on your team who does social media, they may do it very well, but I guarantee it's probably costing you a lot more than outsourcing it to somebody who's a master because they have a team of people doing it as an example. And yet that person doing it on the team, it just with the same as what we were talking about with AI, they're afraid of losing their own value that they're putting into the practice. And so you have an argument there. If they want to maintain some control, there's going to be a problem, right? So again, we're still coming back to the same psychology, which is why do people hold on so tightly, even if something can be done better outsourced, right? And you got to start with the psychology. If you don't, then it's going to be hard to get people. And the doctors have to hear not only the people on their team, but they've got to hear outside sources as well. And sometimes they get so stuck, they're so fearful themselves of losing or upsetting their own people that they'll operate lower level just to make people happy. And that's not necessary.
And that's a key word, Julie, like you said, operating out of fear. And that can be done through anything within that organization. If you operate out of fear versus operate out of forcing or doing something positive, you are going to get stuck and you're not going to get your full potential.
Awesome. You guys, that was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on. I think that we could probably dig into psychology a lot deeper and start talking about some of the early childhood trauma that we've all had, but that's another podcast.
Mike's is too long. I don't know. It's like
we may need a 3-part series for that if you want to dig into mine.
Yeah. I
this has been really fun, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Bite Size Podcast. Tune in to stay up to date with everything dental AI and tech